Welcome to another deep dive. We got so many requests from you to tackle AI risk management, so that's what we're going to be focusing on today.
It's a hot topic for sure. Lots to unpack.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We're going to be using, you guys sent in a ton of CRISC-style questions.
Oh, yeah.
They're great. 25 of them. They're all focused on real-world risks that can come up when you're implementing AI.
Real practical stuff.
Yeah, so it'll be like a crash course in what to watch out for.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great way to kind of get into that practical side of risk. It gets you thinking about different scenarios, what could happen.
Okay, so let's jump right in. First scenario. Imagine you're about to roll out a brand new AI system. Pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah.
But even before you get into the nitty-gritty, like what algorithms to use or what data you need, what's the most important thing to consider from a governance perspective?
Oh.
Is it optimizing the code?
Hmm.
Picking the right data center?
Okay.
Making sure the internet connection is lightning fast? Or is it something else entirely?
You're already on the right track by focusing on governance right from the start. And in this case, the most important thing is C, implementing a strong ethical framework.
So it's not about the tech specs right away.
Right.
It's about the bigger picture, how this AI is going to be used.
Exactly. You have to think about the potential impact this AI could have on people's lives. So fairness and non-discrimination have to be front and center from the very beginning. That ethical framework, it's like your AI's moral compass.
So it's like setting the rules of the game
Yeah.
before the players even take the field.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It guides how you design the AI, develop it, and how you use it. It makes sure everything's aligned with our values and helps us avoid those unintended consequences.
Because I imagine there are a lot of those that pop up when you have technology this powerful.
Oh, yeah.
Now, let's say we just skipped that ethical framework and we just focused on optimizing the code or picking the fastest data center. What kind of trouble could we get into?
Well, think about all those stories you hear about algorithms being biased, like the ones used for loans that end up disadvantaging certain groups. That's exactly what can happen when you prioritize performance over ethics. You could end up with a system that's super efficient, but it's actually perpetuating harmful biases.
Yeah, yikes. So, ethical framework, lesson learned. Okay, next scenario. You're a risk practitioner. You've been tasked with assessing an AI system that makes credit decisions.
Okay.
High stakes.
Yeah.
So where do you even begin? Do you jump into validating the AI model itself? Do you set up customer notification procedures?
Okay.
Do you review regulatory compliance? Or is there a more fundamental step?
You're spot on. Credit decisions, they're a huge deal, and AI is only going to play a bigger role in those processes. But the first control you want to implement is a thorough data quality assessment.
So even before we look at the fancy algorithms, we need to make sure the data itself is solid.
Absolutely. The data is like food for the AI. It's what it learns from. So if that data is biased or incomplete or just plain wrong, the AI is going to learn the wrong things and make bad decisions no matter how sophisticated that model is.
And I'm assuming those other options like model validation, compliance checks, those come later.
Right. They're all super important, but they come after you've laid that solid data foundation. You can't build a strong house on a shaky foundation, right?
Makes sense. Now, let's say we did skip that data quality check and just went straight to validating the model.
Okay.
What could go wrong in that scenario?
Let's say you're training an AI to assess credit risk, but the data you're using is full of historical biases. Even if your model is perfectly validated, that AI is going to learn those biases and perpetuate them. You could end up with unfair lending practices as a result.
Garbage in, garbage out, as they say.
Exactly.
Speaking of things that can go wrong, let's talk about AI model drift. What exactly is that, and what's the biggest risk associated with it?
Okay, so model drift. It's what happens when the AI's performance starts to, degrade over time.
Oh.
It's like if you think about a car slowly losing its alignment.
Okay.
It might still run, but it's not going to be as smooth or as efficient. And the primary risk here is decreased accuracy. The AI's predictions become less reliable, its decisions less trustworthy.
So it's not a sudden crash, it's more like a slow leak.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good way to think about it. And that's actually what makes it so tricky to catch. It can be super subtle at first, You might not even realize the AI is making bad decisions until it's too late.
So what are some warning signs that we should be looking out for?
It depends on the AI, but generally you'd look for any changes in those key performance metrics. Like if you had an AI that used to predict customer churn with 90% accuracy and suddenly that number starts to drop,
Yeah.
that's a sign that something's up. Maybe some drift is happening.
Okay, and what causes this drift in the first place? Is it the AI getting tired?
Not quite. It's more about changes in the real world that the AI wasn't trained to handle.
Okay.
You know, maybe customer behavior shifts or new competitors come into the market or the economy changes. But AI is stuck in its old ways and can't keep up.
So it's like the AI's worldview is becoming outdated.
Exactly. And that's why you need to constantly monitor the AI and retrain it. You got to keep its knowledge fresh.
Keep it current.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. This one's for all the data nerds out there.
All right.
Imagine you're in the middle of an AI risk assessment.
Mm-hmm.
You need to evaluate how well the AI model's performing.
Okay.
Which metric is the most important one to track? Is it processing speed?
Okay.
How efficiently it stores data? The complexity of the code? Or something else entirely?
When we're talking about AI performance, the metric that really matters, the king of the hill, is model accuracy.
Right.
It's all about getting those right answers, regardless of how fancy or complex the AI is under the hood.
So it's not about how flashy the AI is. It's about how well it does its job.
Exactly. We can get caught up in all the bells and whistles, the technical wizardry, but at the end of the day, what we need is AI that is reliable, that's effective, and that's trustworthy.
Accurate. All right, so accuracy is king. Next question. This one's about a topic that's been making headlines. AI bias.
Big one.
Big one. If we're trying to manage this risk, what's the most effective control we can put in place? Is it constantly retraining the model, beefing up processing power, layering on more security protocols, or is there a more targeted approach?
You're right to flag AI bias. It's a big deal. And the most effective way to manage it is by using diverse training data.
Okay, so it all comes back to the data again.
It always does.
Yeah.
If the AI is only learning from a limited or biased data set, it's going to reflect those biases in the decisions it makes. It's like trying to teach a child about the world using only a handful of picture books.
Right.
Their understanding is going to be incomplete and
Yeah.
probably skewed.
So let's say you're building an AI to help with hiring decisions. What kind of data would you need to use to make sure it's not just perpetuating existing biases?
You'd need data that actually reflects the real world, people from all walks of life, different backgrounds, genders, ethnicities, everything. If you don't have that, you're basically creating an AI that's just going to reinforce those existing inequalities.
Okay, so diversity in the data is key.
Absolutely.
If we want to minimize bias in the AI's output, now let's talk about transparency.
Okay.
AI can sometimes feel like a magic trick. You see the result, but you don't understand how it got there.
Right.
So how do we make an AI model more transparent? Is it by creating tons of documentation, making the AI run faster, ramping up encryption, or is there another way that's more effective?
Transparency is huge if you want people to trust AI. And the way to do that is through explainable AI, XAI for short.
XAI. Okay, what exactly does it mean for an AI to be explainable?
Imagine you get denied for a loan by an AI. Wouldn't you want to know why? Explainable AI, it tries to lift the curtain on that decision-making process so humans can actually understand how the AI came to its conclusion.
So it's not enough for the AI to just give us the answer?
Right.
We need to know how it got there.
You got it. Explainable AI gives us insights into that reasoning process. It's like having a window into the black box so we can see those gears turning.
Yeah, this seems particularly important in, like, healthcare or finance, where those AI decisions have a really big impact on people's lives.
Oh, absolutely. Explainable AI is all about building that trust and accountability. It lets us double-check that the AI is making decisions for the right reasons and that it's not being driven by some hidden bias that we don't know about.
Okay, transparency is key.
Yeah.
Now let's address a fear that a lot of people have about AI. What's the biggest risk we face when we hand over decision-making power to these systems?
Okay.
Is it that the systems might have downtime, potential data breaches,
Okay.
network congestion, or is it something else entirely?
You've hit on a really valid concern there. The biggest risk with giving AI decision-making power is, honestly, the lack of human oversight.
So it's not that the AI is suddenly going to become evil and self-aware. It's more that it might make decisions that are technically correct, but don't have that human touch, that nuance and empathy.
You got it. AI, for all its intelligence, still doesn't fully get the complexity of the real world, especially when it comes to human emotions, human values. It just doesn't quite grasp those.
Yeah.
So we can't just let the AI run wild and expect perfect decisions in every situation.
So it's a partnership.
It is.
not a takeover.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We need to build in safeguards, we need checks and balances, and ultimately we need to keep humans in the loop to make sure those AI decisions are actually aligned with our values and our ethical principles.
Okay, so it's a partnership.
Mm.
Now let's talk about implementing AI in industries that have a lot of regulations, like healthcare or finance.
Okay.
What's absolutely essential in those environments? Is it processing speed, storage capacity, how slick the user interface is, or something else entirely?
In those highly regulated industries, compliance is non-negotiable. It has to be your top priority.
So before we even think about what the AI can do, we need to make sure it's playing by the rules.
Absolutely. Those regulations are there to protect people, make sure things are fair, and keep those vital industries running smoothly.
Right.
Cutting corners on compliance can lead to really serious consequences.
Yeah, imagine you build this incredible AI-powered medical diagnosis tool, only to realize it's violating patient privacy laws. Not good.
No, definitely not a good look. That's why understanding the regulations is so critical right from the start.
Mm,
Compliance needs to be built into the AI's DNA, so to speak.
compliance, got it. Okay, let's talk about security. AI models, they're valuable assets.
Hmm.
And like any valuable asset, they need to be protected.
Definitely.
So which control is the most effective for managing those AI model security risks? Is it regular backups,
Okay.
model versioning, access controls, or performance monitoring?
When you're trying to protect those AI models, strong access controls are your best line of defense.
So it's like having a security guard at the door, making sure only authorized personnel can get in.
Exactly. Access controls are like your gatekeeper. They prevent unauthorized access, modification, or even deletion of those AI models. It's a fundamental security practice.
And what kind of security breaches should we be worried about?
Think data breaches, intellectual property theft, even sabotage. In the wrong hands, an AI model could be misused or its sensitive data could be compromised.
Okay, access controls, they're the lock on the door, keeping our valuable AI safe and sound.
Yes.
You've built your AI, you've tested it, you're ready to unleash it on the world.
Right.
What's the most effective way to manage those risks that come with deploying an AI system? Do you go all in with a big bang launch, or is there a more cautious approach?
Deploying AI can definitely be nerve-wracking. To manage the risks, a phased implementation is your best bet.
So, like dipping your toes in the water before you jump in the pool.
Exactly. Start small, maybe with a limited group of users or a smaller set of features. That way, you can identify any issues, any unexpected things that pop up in a controlled environment.
So why not just launch it all at once and fix the problems as they come up?
Well, imagine you release an AI-powered customer service bot to your entire customer base without fully testing it. If there's a glitch, it could turn into a PR nightmare and damage your brand.
Oh yeah, slow and steady wins the race.
Right.
Now let's talk about data governance specifically in the context of AI.
Okay.
What's the most crucial factor to consider here? Is it about where the data is stored, how often you back it up, how quickly it can be processed, or is there something even more fundamental?
You're right to emphasize data governance. It's a cornerstone of responsible AI. And when it comes to AI, the most critical element of data governance is data lineage.
Data lineage. So
Yeah.
it's not just about having the data, it's about knowing where it came from and how it's been handled along the way.
Precisely. Think of data lineage as creating a detailed history of your data, from its source all the way through to its current state, understanding where it originated, how it's been transformed, every single step it's gone through.
Okay, and why is that so important, especially when we're talking about AI?
Two key reasons. First, it ensures transparency and accountability. If you know the data's history, you can identify any potential sources of bias or errors.
Right.
And second, it's absolutely crucial for compliance. A lot of regulations, especially those dealing with sensitive data, they require you to be able to demonstrate that data lineage.
So it's like a chain of custody for your data.
That's a perfect way to put it. Data lineage is a cornerstone of good data governance, and it's absolutely essential in the world of AI. Now, let's move on to another critical step in the AI development process, validation. Let's say you've developed an AI model and you need to validate its outputs, make sure they're accurate and reliable. What's the best way to do this?
Okay.
Peer reviews, automated testing, getting feedback from users, or is there a more statistically sound approach? To truly validate an AI model's outputs, statistical sampling is the gold standard.
So we're not just eyeballing a few examples, we're taking a more systematic approach.
Exactly. Statistical sampling means selecting a representative subset of data points from the entire data set and then using statistical analysis to evaluate the model's performance on that sample. This allows us to then extrapolate those findings to the larger population with a certain level of confidence.
Okay, so we're bringing in the statistical big guns to make sure those AI outputs are truly reliable.
Yes.
Now let's talk about data privacy.
Okay, big one.
Huge, especially when we're dealing with sensitive data in an AI system. What's the most important risk mitigation strategy? Regular backups, performance monitoring, training the users, or is there a more fundamental safeguard we should have in place?
When you're talking about protecting sensitive data, particularly in AI systems, data encryption is non-negotiable. It's the foundation.
So it's not just about keeping the data safe from being physically stolen. It's about making it unreadable to anyone who doesn't have the key.
That's it. Encryption scrambles that data, making it gibberish to anyone without the decryption key. Think of it like putting that sensitive information in a vault that only you can open.
This seems super crucial for things like healthcare and finance, where a data breach could be catastrophic.
Oh, absolutely. Data encryption, it's a fundamental security best practice, and it's even more important with AI because we're handling such huge amounts of sensitive data.
Okay, encryption is key. Now let's zoom out a bit and talk about the bigger picture of AI governance.
Okay.
When you're setting policies for AI development and use, what should your main focus be? Keeping costs low, moving as quickly as possible, getting all the technical specs perfect? Or is there a more strategic consideration that should guide those policies?
You're right to highlight the need for a strategic approach to AI governance. And when you're establishing those policies, your primary focus should be on stakeholder alignment.
Stakeholder alignment. So it's not just about what the tech team wants or what the CEO decides.
Right.
It's about getting everyone on board.
That's it. AI systems touch so many parts of an organization and can even have effects outside the company. So you need to consider the employees, the customers, the regulators, even the public. Getting their buy-in is key if you want to be successful in the long run.
Why is that buy-in so important?
Well, imagine this. You implement an AI system, but the employees find it intrusive, or the customers think it's unfair. What happens? You get resistance, ethical dilemmas, maybe even legal challenges. Aligning everyone from the get-go helps avoid all that.
So before we even start writing those AI policies, we need to talk to people, understand their perspectives, and find some common ground.
That's the key. It's about building consensus, making sure those policies reflect everyone's values and needs, not just a select few.
So collaborative policymaking. Okay, now let's get back to the technical side of things. We've talked about how important data quality is, but there's another challenge with data and AI called overfitting. What's the best way to prevent that? Is it gathering more training data, increasing processing power, tightening up security, or is there a more specific technique we should be using?
You've hit on a really common challenge in AI development. Overfitting, it's basically when the model becomes a memorization machine.
Oh,
It learns the training data so well that it can't generalize to new information.
right.
And the best way to combat overfitting is cross-validation.
Cross-validation. So it's not about how much data you have, it's about using the data you have in a smarter way.
Exactly. Cross-validation is about dividing your training data into multiple subsets.
Okay.
You train the AI on one set and then test it on another. This helps you see how well it actually generalizes to new information.
So it's like giving the AI a pop quiz,
Yeah,
just to make sure it understands the concepts, not just the specific examples it's been shown.
perfect analogy. It makes sure that your AI can actually apply what it's learned to new situations, not just parrot back what it's already seen. Now, let's talk about a reality that a lot of organizations face, having to rely on vendors for AI solutions. What's the best way to manage the risks that come with working with these external partners? Should you just increase your budget, focus on getting the tech specs exactly right, speed up the implementation, or is there a more proactive approach you can take? You're spot on. Vendor risk management in AI is critical. The best way to mitigate those risks is through regular audits.
So it's not enough to just sign a contract and hope for the best. You have to actively keep tabs on things.
Exactly. Those regular audits let you independently verify that the vendor is doing what they're supposed to be doing, following best practices, maintaining those security and privacy controls. It's like a checkup, you know? You don't wait until something breaks to take a look under the hood.
Right. It's preventative maintenance.
That's it.
Those audits, they give you insights into how the vendor operates, and they can help you catch any potential issues before they snowball into something bigger.
Absolutely. Now let's switch gears and talk about business continuity.
Okay.
What happens if an AI system that's crucial to the business suddenly goes offline? What's the most important thing to have in place?
Uh-oh.
Is it backups of the AI model?
Right.
Tons of documentation, really comprehensive training programs, or is it something else entirely?
Hmm.
When an essential AI system goes down, the absolute most important thing is having those alternative processes.
Okay, so it's not just about getting the AI back online as quickly as possible.
Right.
It's about having a plan B to bridge that gap.
You got it. You need to have a way to keep things running even if the AI is temporarily out of commission.
Hmm.
Those alternative processes could involve having humans step in and take over the tasks, or using a simpler system that doesn't rely on AI, or maybe even outsourcing some things until the AI is back up and running.
So it's like having a backup generator for your house in case the power goes out.
That's the perfect way to think about it. It's about minimizing that disruption and making sure you can keep the business running smoothly, even if you face some unexpected challenges.
Okay, alternative processes, like a backup generator.
Hmm.
Now, let's go back to those black box AI models. We talked about the importance of transparency earlier. But what's the main risk we face when we're using AI models where we can't easily see how they're making decisions?
Okay.
Is the risk related to processing speed, storage requirements, how much it costs to implement, or is it something else entirely?
The biggest risk with those black box models is their limited explainability. It's the flip side of the transparency coin we talked about earlier.
So even if those black box models are giving us accurate results, the fact that we don't know how they're getting there is a problem.
It is a problem. That lack of transparency can lead to mistrust, especially if the AI is making decisions that have a real impact on people's lives. If you don't understand how a decision was made, how can you be sure it was fair, unbiased, and aligned with your values?
It's like getting a medical diagnosis from a doctor who refuses to explain their reasoning.
Right.
You might follow their advice, but you'd still have some doubts, right?
Exactly. And beyond that, it makes it really hard to hold anyone accountable. If something goes wrong, it's tough to figure out why or who's responsible if we don't even know how the AI reached its conclusion.
Yeah, that makes sense. So explainability is really important for building trust and making sure someone's accountable.
Absolutely.
Now, let's imagine you're on a team that's constantly updating and refining their AI models, which I imagine is pretty common in this field.
Yeah, it's a pretty fast-paced world.
So what's the most effective way to manage all those different versions and updates? Frequent backups, performance monitoring, user training, or is there a more specialized approach for this?
When you're dealing with constant changes, the best way to stay on top of everything is with a really robust change management process.
So it's not just about hitting save on a new version. It's about having a system in place to track those changes.
Exactly. A well-defined process brings order to the chaos. It ensures that any changes are documented, they're reviewed, they're approved, and then implemented in a consistent way.
It's like having a detailed log of edits in a shared document, so you can see who changed what, when, and why.
That's a great analogy. In AI, where models are super complex and constantly evolving, change management is essential for staying in control, ensuring quality, and making collaborations smoother.
Okay, so change management is like the conductor of our AI orchestra, keeping everything in sync. Now let's talk about ethics again.
Okay.
We've talked about those ethical frameworks, but how do you actually make sure AI development and use stays aligned with those principles? Is it about regular training for the developers, implementing tons of technical controls, documenting everything meticulously, or is there a more human-centered approach?
You can't just talk about ethics, you have to actually build them into the process. One really effective way to ensure ongoing ethical compliance is through ethics committee review.
Okay, so we have a dedicated group whose job it is to make sure everything's staying on track ethically.
Precisely. This committee would be made up of people from all different backgrounds, with expertise in ethics, law, technology, and social impact. They provide an outside perspective, helping you spot any potential ethical concerns and making sure everything's aligned with the organization's values.
So they're like the conscience for the AI development process.
Exactly. They act as a safeguard, making sure the AI is being used for good and considering the potential risks and consequences that might not be obvious to the developers.
Okay, I'm noticing a theme here. Responsible AI, it's not just about the tech itself.
Right.
It's about the people and the processes around it. Now, let's talk about a specific technique for assessing risk in AI systems. We've talked about risk assessments generally, but is there a specific technique that's best for evaluating those unique risks that come with AI?
Okay.
Would you use a traditional risk matrix, a cost-benefit analysis,
Sure.
a purely technical review, or is there something else that would be a better fit?
When it comes to AI risks, you need a specialized approach.
Yeah.
An AI-specific framework is the way to go.
So we can't just dust off our old risk management playbook.
Right.
We need tools and techniques that are designed for AI.
Absolutely. Traditional frameworks, they're great, but they often miss the nuances of AI. You need a framework that can handle things like data quality, bias, transparency, and security, as well as AI's broader impact on society.
It's like using the right tool for the job.
Exactly.
You wouldn't use a hammer to screw in a light bulb. Okay, right tool for the job. Now let's talk about monitoring.
Okay.
We talked about model drift earlier, but when it comes to monitoring AI in general, what's the most important thing to consider? Keeping costs down, designing a user-friendly interface,
Yeah.
having enough storage space, or is there something else that's even more crucial?
The most crucial part of AI monitoring, setting up real-time alerts.
Real-time alerts. So we're not just passively checking on the AI every now and then. We're setting up a system that tells us right away if anything's wrong.
Exactly. Those alerts, they're your early warning system.
Okay.
They're going to flag you potential problems as they emerge, giving you a heads up so you can intervene before things get out of hand.
It's like a smoke detector, right?
Exactly. You don't want to wait until the whole house is on fire to realize there's a problem.
Right. You need that early warning.
That's it. Real-time alerts give you that crucial heads up so you can address issues before they escalate.
Okay, we're not just setting it and forgetting it, we're actively monitoring.
Right.
Now let's go back to change management for a minute.
All right.
We already talked about the need for a structured change management process, but when it comes to actually making those changes to an AI system, what's the most important factor to consider? Speed, cost, the technical specs. Or is there something else we should be prioritizing?
When you're making changes to an AI system, impact assessment is absolutely crucial.
Impact assessment. So before we hit the update button, we need to think through the potential consequences.
Yes. A thorough impact assessment helps you think through the effects of that change. And not just from a technical standpoint, you also consider things like user experience, how it affects business processes, and even the ethical implications.
It's like doing a little risk assessment
Yes,
just for that change.
exactly. By carefully considering the impact of the change, you can make informed decisions and minimize the risk of any unwanted side effects.
No rushing into changes without thinking them through.
Definitely not.
Now let's talk about documentation. We know it's important in any software development project, but AI models are extra complex and constantly changing. How do we manage documentation for something like that? Do we just rely on cloud storage, regular updates, detailed access logs? Or is there a more specialized approach that's better suited for AI?
Managing AI documentation effectively requires a robust version control system.
Version control. So it's not just about having the document, it's about keeping track of every little change that's been made to it over time.
Exactly. Version control systems like Git, they let you keep a detailed history of every change, revert back to older versions if you need to, and collaborate with others on updates without creating a tangled mess. It's like having a time machine for your documents.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you can go back, see how things have evolved, compare different versions, and even undo changes if you need to. It's particularly valuable for AI documentation because those models are so complex and go through so many revisions.
Okay, so version control is like our ultimate documentation organizer. Now, let's wrap things up by going back to our old friend, data quality.
All right.
We know that bad data leads to bad AI, but when it comes to managing the risks that are specifically tied to the data used to train AI models, what's the most effective control? Data encryption, backup procedures, access controls. Or is there a more targeted approach we should be using?
For AI training data, a robust data validation process is absolutely essential. It's definitely about making sure the data is in tip-top shape before we feed it to the AI. Data validation means putting that data through a whole bunch of tests, making sure it meets those quality standards. We're on the lookout for missing values, inconsistencies, outliers, biases, anything that could mess up the AI's learning process.
So it's like having a quality control inspector for our data, making sure only the best stuff makes it through.
Perfect analogy. Data validation is a key step to avoid the risks of bad data, making sure that the AI is learning from a reliable and representative set of data. Now let's move on to something that's getting more and more important as these AI systems become more complex, managing how all these different AI systems talk to each other. What's the best way to handle the risks that come with those AI to AI interactions? Do we focus on really rigorous testing, super clear documentation, really robust security protocols? Or is there something else we should be thinking about?
That's an interesting one. As we move toward having all these different AI systems working together, It seems like managing those interactions is going to be a big challenge.
It is. And the key to getting it right is establishing clear communication protocols between the systems.
Communication protocols. So it's like we need to create a universal language that all these different AI systems can understand.
Exactly. These protocols define exactly how those AIs exchange information, what format that information takes, and what actions should be taken based on that information.
So why is that so important? Why do they need to be speaking the same language, so to speak?
Imagine this. You've got two AIs working together, but they're speaking different languages or making different assumptions about the data they're sharing. Chaos. It could lead to all sorts of problems, errors, inconsistencies, even conflicts in the decisions they make.
Got it. Clear communication is essential,
It really is.
just like in any relationship.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's say we're dealing with an especially complex AI system with multiple models all working together. How do we keep track of all those different parts and make sure the whole system is functioning properly? Is it super detailed documentation, rigorous testing, real-time monitoring, or maybe a combination of all of those things?
That's definitely a challenge when you're dealing with complex AI systems. The most effective approach is to implement a layered monitoring system.
Layered monitoring. So it's not just about keeping an eye on each AI model individually.
Right.
It's also about monitoring how they interact and influence each other.
You got it. You need multiple layers of monitoring to really understand how well the system's doing. You might have one layer monitoring those individual models, tracking their accuracy, looking for any drift. Then you'd have another layer that specifically monitors how those models interact with each other,
Right.
checking for any inconsistencies, conflicts, or any weird feedback loops that might be happening.
It's kind of like having a security system where you have different cameras covering different areas. You
Right.
want to make sure you don't have any blind spots.
You got it. A layered monitoring system gives you that comprehensive view so you can spot problems and figure out what's causing them more effectively.
Layered monitoring, like a multi-camera security system. Got it. Now, let's talk about a risk that's not specific to AI, but definitely becomes a bigger deal when you're dealing with AI unintended consequences. How can we even try to anticipate and mitigate the risks that come from those ripple effects that we just didn't see coming? Do we rely on super extensive testing, really robust ethical frameworks, a lot of stakeholder engagement, or is it a combination of those things?
Unintended consequences, that's one of the trickiest parts of AI development. The best way to address them is by using a bunch of different approaches, combining scenario planning with continuous monitoring and evaluation.
Scenario planning. So like brainstorming all those what-if situations.
Yeah.
And then thinking through how the AI might behave in those different situations.
That's it. You try to imagine all the different ways that AI might be used, the different types of input it might get, different environments it could end up in, and then really think through the consequences, both good and bad.
It's a little bit like writing a science fiction novel.
Yeah. It's all about imagining the possibilities and then figuring out if there are any potential problems and building in safeguards so we can avoid them.
Okay, and what about that ongoing monitoring and evaluation? How does that fit into all of this?
Well, even with really good scenario planning, you're never going to be able to predict every single thing that might happen. That's why it's so important to keep a close eye on the AI system once it's out in the world, monitoring how it's behaving,
Yeah.
gathering feedback from users, and making adjustments as you learn more.
So it's like a continuous feedback loop.
It is.
We're always learning and adapting as we go.
That's how it has to be. Managing those unintended consequences is a never-ending job. You have to be proactive, you have to be observant, and you have to be willing to adapt as you learn more about how these AI systems are interacting with the real world. Now, let's shift gears and talk about something that's often forgotten in the excitement of AI, its limitations. What are some of the most important limitations of AI that we need to keep in mind, especially as we develop and use more of these systems? Is it their lack of common sense, their susceptibility to bias, their inability to really understand human emotions, or is there something else entirely?
Yeah, good point. It's easy to get caught up in all the hype and forget that AI isn't perfect. It's not magic.
Right.
So understanding those limitations is key if we want to use it responsibly.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest limitations of today's AI systems is their lack of general intelligence.
General intelligence.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the ability to learn, to reason, to solve problems in all sorts of different situations the way humans can, right?
That's it. Today's AI, they're amazing at specific tasks, but they just don't have that flexibility and adaptability, that common sense that really makes up human intelligence.
So they can beat a world champion chess player, but they can't figure out how to fold laundry or make a decent cup of coffee.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, so no robot butlers in the near future.
Oh,
Now let's talk about something that we often see in those sci-fi movies. AI becoming uncontrollable or even dangerous. What are the real risks we need to consider when we're talking about the safety and security of AI, especially as those systems become more powerful?
okay.
Are we talking about malicious use, unintended consequences, algorithmic bias,
Yeah.
or something else entirely?
That fear of the unknown, it's been around since the beginning of AI. And while those movie scenarios of rogue AIs might be a bit dramatic, there are definitely real risks we need to consider, especially as AI gets smarter. The biggest concern right now is misuse.
Misuse. So someone deliberately using AI to do bad things,
Right.
like creating deepfakes to spread misinformation, or building autonomous weapon systems that can make life or death decisions without any human input.
Exactly. AI is a powerful tool, and like any powerful tool, it can be used for good or for bad. That's why we need to be proactive about safety, about setting ethical guidelines, and about having a global conversation about responsible AI development and use.
It sounds like we're in a new era of responsibility when it comes to technology. It's not just about what AI can do anymore, it's about what it should do.
Absolutely. AI can really amplify human ingenuity, but it's up to us to make sure it's used to make the world a better place, not a worse one.
Okay, so it's a call to action for all of us to be more aware, more engaged, and more responsible as we move forward with AI. We'll be back after a quick break to finish our deep dive into AI risk management. And we're back, wrapping up our AI risk management deep dive. We covered so much ground today, from ethical frameworks and data governance to the whole model drift thing and all those unintended consequences that can pop up.
It's a lot to think about.
Definitely a lot. And it seems like responsible AI isn't just about the technical stuff. It's really about having the right mindset and processes in place.
You got it. It's about realizing that AI isn't some neutral tool. It actually reflects our values, biases, all the choices we make.
And ultimately, it comes down to making sure those choices are aligned with what's best for everyone, for humanity as a whole.
You said it. It's a really powerful reminder that AI, at the end of the day, it's a human thing.
Yeah.
And as we keep pushing the boundaries of what we can do with it, we got to remember those consequences and keep striving to use it for good, not for bad. I couldn't agree more. It's a really exciting time to be involved in AI. But we need to stay humble, be cautious, and really take that responsibility seriously.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into AI risk management. We hope this has given you some valuable insights and tools to navigate this ever-changing world of AI.
Absolutely. And remember, this is just the beginning of the conversation. The more we learn, the more we share, the more we talk about responsible AI, the better we'll be at shaping a future where AI benefits everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep exploring the world of AI. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.